What's going on, everybody? American Football Network here with another video today. And today we're bringing you guys our preview and prediction video for the NC State Kansas State Pop-Tarts Bowl game. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment those thoughts and opinions down below. Let me know who you have winning this game. Let me know your score predictions for it. Also, help me reach that goal of 1,125 subs by the end of December. We're closing in on that, about 15 away. So let's get going on that and go ahead and hit that goal before the bowl games start. We'll be streaming a lot of them over here as well with the football experts. So those usually do pretty good. I know the first year on our bowl game streams, I gained about probably close to 400 subscribers, gained about 300 last year. So we're looking to top that even more this year. So make sure you guys subscribe, hit that notification bell. Lots of content coming out. Going to be lots of bowl game streams. But let's go ahead and jump into today's video. So first look at the NC State Wolfpack. They come in this one 9-3 on the season, finished 6-2 in the ACC. Great year for Dave Doran, especially considering what he was working with at the quarterback position. Went with Brendan Armstrong early on in the season. He was, not definitely below average. I mean, you look at the last game he started for them before they switched to MJ Morris. That would be against Louisville. He was 13 of 25 for 112 yards, no touchdowns, two picks. The week before that at Virginia, threw for 180 yards on 50% completion, two touchdowns and a pick. Against Notre Dame in week two, 22 of 47, 260 yards, two touchdowns, three picks. So was very unshaky. In the first, let's see, 5 weeks that he started, dude threw for six picks and five touchdowns. So wasn't looking great there. But then they go to MJ Morris for the Marshall game, the Clemson game, and the Miami game. He plays pretty solid for them. Armstrong doesn't attempt to pass in any of those games. Does get a few runs in. He had one run for -5 yards against Marshall, three carries for 5 yards against Clemson, and eight carries for 51 yards against Miami. Then MJ Morris breaks the news. All right, I'm done. I'm transferring. I just used you guys to, kind of improve my stock a little bit. Now I'm hitting the transfer portal. See ya. So for the final three games, Armstrong is back in, and he actually turns it around and plays great in those last three games. Against Wake Forest was his first one on the road, 12 of 17, 113 yards, one touchdown, also added in 15 carries for 96 yards and a touchdown. The following week at Virginia Tech, 18 carries for 26 yards. 18 of 26 passing for 62.9% completion. So he's right at that 70% completion mark, whereas he had only hit that once, anywhere near that once earlier in the season. That was against VMI. For 203 yards in that Virginia Tech game, two touchdowns, no picks. Also added in 21 carries for 89 yards and two touchdowns. Then you look in the finale against North Carolina, 22 of 31 for 334 yards, three touchdowns, no picks, nine carries for 22 yards. So in that final stretch, he was six touchdowns to zero picks. And then added in three more rushing touchdowns, with completing about 70% of his passes and averaging about 200 yards through the air. So I mean, he really stepped it up, that's for sure, and elevated his game whenever he got that second opportunity there towards the end of the season. And you look at Kansas State; they went 8-4, kind of finished out a disappointing stretch towards the end, and they lose their quarterback Will Howard for this game. You look at his numbers on the year; he was their main go-to guy at quarterback. 219 to 357 for 2,643 yards, 24 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. So, that's a big loss, especially when you look too. He's their third leading rusher with 81 carries for 351 yards and nine touchdowns on the ground as well. Um, but I don't think looking into him leaving is I don't think him leaving is kind of the same as MJ Morris leaving, and the way that MJ Morris left. Will Howard finished out the season, decided he's going to transfer before the bowl game. But I think that is a pretty big loss for this Kansas State team. I mean, you look, they're losing their starting quarterback, whereas NC State, yes, MJ Morris is in the portal. Armstrong is going to start. I mean, he's played the last 3 weeks for him, and he started the season. He's got plenty of starting experience, but they expect Avery Johnson to be the starter for Kansas State, and that leads us right into our next little part of the video: the opt-outs, transfers, and injuries for both of these teams. Who's playing, who isn't. So a quick look at that for the Wolfpack. We mentioned quarterback MJ Morris transferring out, running back Michael Allen transferring out, wide receiver Terrell Timmons out, wide receiver Porter Rooks is going to be out. You look at those two guys. Rooks is 13 catches, 166 yards on the season for him, and Timmons 11 catches for 195 yards on the year for him. So not any major losses there. Running back Jordan Houston also hitting the portal. Um, you look at him and Michael Allen. Allen had 52 carries for 251 yards. Um, and then Houston had 25 carries for 96 yards. So, I mean, not really losing a whole lot there. Christopher Tootle is also transferring out. And then you look at the center slash left guard, Lyndon Cooper. He's transferring. He lost his job midway through the season, so not losing a starter there. You look at wide receiver Anthony Smith. He's transferring out. He only got 93 snaps on the year. Cecil Powell, the safety, out 43 snaps on the year for him. But the big one is they're losing their starting nose tackle, C.J. Clark. He had 451 snaps for him on the year. And just a quick overview of kind of his stats. He had 22 tackles on the year. He had one sack. Um, so that's that you losing a starting defensive lineman there. That's not ever anything you want to lose. And then potential opt outs is a guy that's going to the NFL. The star on the defensive side of the football for him is Peyton Wilson. But as of right now, it's still out that he's going to play. You really want him to play. I mean, he's just been a star all around for you on the defensive side of the ball. 138 tackles on the year, 6 sacks, 6 pass deflections, 3 picks. One of them he took back for a touchdown. He's got one fumble, or one forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. So he's just always around the football. So hopefully he'll play for NC State. A good pickup for him, for them if he's able to. If he does end up playing for the bowl game, that would be huge for them. And right now hearing that he will play. For Kansas State, we mentioned quarterback Will Howard going to be out. They expect Avery Johnson to start. Look at Johnson's stats on the year: 23 of 35 for 301 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But obviously, probably just got a lot of. I haven't watched a lot of Kansas State, but I'm sure he was probably just getting in kind of some mop up duties. You look here, running back Trayshawn Ward, he is going to be out for them. That's their second leading rusher, 124 carries for 643 yards, 5 touchdowns on the year. But they still have Giddens at running back as well. They also lose running back Anthony Frias, only 41 snaps for him. Fullback Christian Moore, only 41 snaps for him as well. They do lose their starting safety Kobe Savage, 711 snaps for him. That's going to be a big loss. He was their third leading tackler with 57 tackles, had 3 interceptions. That was tied for the team lead. Um, and you also look here, starting cornerback Will Lee, also going to be out. He was at 42 tackles on the year, 6 pass deflections, 2 interceptions, forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. So he was pretty active, pretty good player for him in the secondary. Also losing edge Nate Matlick. He had 324 snaps on the season. He wasn't there. Um, he wasn't there a starter necessarily, but he was still a very valuable piece to have down there on that defensive line for him. He had 15 tackles on the season, 4 sacks, and a pass deflection. So he was a pretty good pass rusher for him. And then you look, they also lose cornerback Jordan Wright. He only had 60 snaps on the year. And wide receiver RJ Garcia, he only had 14 catches on the season. Let me look at some opt outs the um, for the Kansas State Wildcats. Wide receiver Phillip Brooks, he is opting out for the NFL. He was their second leading receiver with 53 catches for 589 yards, 5 touchdowns. Also, Ben Sinnott, the tight end, he is also going to opt out. He's their leading receiver with 49 catches, 676 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And then you look potential opt outs to watch: offensive guard Cooper Beebe. He's potentially going to be opting out. And then you look at injuries for them. They have a few injuries. Linebacker Jake Clifton, he was lost for the year in week 11, and that's after Kansas State already lost Daniel Green to injury, who was their starting middle linebacker. So that linebacker position may be a little bit thin for the Wildcats. Also losing starting defensive tackle Uso Siamalo. He was on crutches for the final game for the Wildcats. We'll see. He may be back for in time for the bowl game, but not likely. Then another big thing for Kansas State is offensive coordinator Colin Klein has accepted the offensive coordinator job at A&M, so he won't be with them. So, I mean, Kansas State's going to be without their starting quarterback, their top two receivers, their second leading rusher, and their offensive coordinator, and potentially two starters on that offensive line. So that's that could be as well as two starters in their secondary who have been pretty active for them. So it's going to be a tough one here for Kansas State. Um, how they fare in this one. So that's definitely something to watch in that one. But now on to our biggest three factors of this game. Number one for us is the quarterback play. I think that we obviously know more about Armstrong than we do um, about Avery Johnson. So there's not really a whole lot you can necessarily base this off of, but you are going to need your quarterbacks to play well, especially for Kansas State. You look, like I just mentioned, they're without their offensive coordinator, without their top two receivers, and without their second leading rusher. So you're going to need them to really, really step it up and play around this guy and really make it easier for him. Going to need to establish a run game for sure to really just help him out offensively. And so, like it's going to be it's going to be one that they're really going to have to put an emphasis on and make sure that that guy is comfortable. And you look on the other hand for Armstrong, you just got to keep playing how you were the last 3 weeks of the season and not go back to the same Brennan Armstrong you were through the first five. You really got to keep that going and playing how you were there. But again, I think it comes down to quarterback play. Number one is which quarterback is able to lead his team down the field and look the best with his team. Now, obviously, Johnson isn't a bad quarterback. I mean, he's gotten a decent amount of reps. He's only thrown the ball 35 times, but he's carried it 45 times for 225 yards and 6 touchdowns. Their fourth leading rusher, just behind Trayshawn Ward and Will Howard, who obviously led by DJ Giddens, who's over 1,000 yards for him on the season. So he's been kind of more of their running quarterback. They've put him in a lot in games. Kansas State's used him a lot, but typically in just kind of run packages. So we'll see what they dial up there. And see how that goes. Number two for me is stopping the run if you're NC State. We just talked about, with Avery Johnson and how he plays, that they bring him in a lot for different run packages. Not only that, they're like we've mentioned, they're down their two best receivers, receiving threats. So they're probably going to put a big emphasis on the running game with Giddens and Johnson. So if you're NC State, you got to find a way to stop that. Do not let them beat you through the air, because if you can stop that running game, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Johnson and those receivers out there. A lot of pressure on them. And so if you're able to stop their run game, then you're in a pretty good situation, because that makes them one dimensional, and they're already down their best passer. They got a guy who's only thrown the ball 35 times all year. So you're looking pretty good if you can shut down that run game. But obviously, that's a lot easier said than done. Kansas State runs the ball very effectively. They've ran it for close to 2,400 yards on the season. They got four guys, or excuse me, three guys over 350 yards. Obviously, two of them won't be playing with Howard out and Trayshawn Ward out. They're back up with 643 yards. But Giddens, good runner, over 1,000 yards on 195 carries, 5.5 yards per carry, and 9 touchdowns. And he's got a little bit of big play ability, to able to pop one every now and then. So that'll be something to watch for. But again, if you're NC State, you got to find a way to stop that running game for them. Next up on the big keys is turnovers. That is key number three. And you're probably thinking these teams turned the ball over a lot, but it's actually quite the opposite. Both of them are seventh in the country in turnover margin at 10. NC State turned the ball over 14 times this season, but they forced 24. Kansas State turned the ball over 12 times this year. They forced 22. So turnovers can play a factor in this game in who turns the ball over. Um, if one team turns the football over, that right there may do it. If the other team's able to capitalize off of it. So turnovers are going to be hard to come by in this game, you would imagine. But at the same time, both of them do a great job of um, forcing the turnover. So um, it may be where they actually turned the ball over a good bit. Both of them are. NC State is seventh with forcing 24 turnovers. Kansas State not far behind them at 17th, forcing 22. So it may actually be the other way around where they just force a lot of turnovers, but and they don't really come into effect, or whoever turns the ball over the most out of all the turnovers. But I think that I really do think that turnovers are going to be a little bit hard to come by in this game. So definitely want to be on the right side of the turnover margin if you're these teams, because I think that could give the extra edge and really determine who ends up winning this football game, is who can win that turnover margin and who comes out on top with it. So those are my keys to the game. Number one, quarterback play. Number two, stopping the run if you're NC State. And number three, turnovers. But now on to my score prediction for this game. NC State, or excuse me, Kansas State comes in favored by 3 points in this one, but I don't really understand why they're necessarily the favorite. I have NC State winning 24-23. I think it's a closer game. But I mean, Kansas State, they're down their starting quarterback. They're down their two leading receivers. They're down their backup running back. They're down two starters in that secondary, and two pretty big starters for them in the secondary, and they're still favored by 3. So we'll see what happens there. But I think the biggest X factor for NC State in this game is going to be KC Concepcion. He's been their leading rusher and their leading receiver. Or I think he's their second. Yeah, he's their second leading rusher behind Armstrong. So I mean, this dude is he just they'd find ways to get him the football. And he's going to be a difference maker in this game. He's be looking for him. I believe he's number 10. He's going to be making a lot of big plays for him in this game. And I think that he is ultimately the difference. Armstrong has his top guy. Kansas State does not. I think that ends the difference. But I think for me, this is definitely the bowl game I'm most excited as for, that is not in the playoff, and that is, not my team's game. Obviously, I'm excited for the Gator Bowl between Clemson and Kentucky as a Clemson fan, but just for pure entertainment, I'm hyped for this NC State Kansas State game. I think it's going to be a great football game. And again, I think NC State wins at 24-23. I think it's a very close game. I don't think either one of these teams really pulls away from the other one. And I think it's a dogfight down to the end, but I do have NC State pulling it out 24-23 in the end. But that's going to wrap up today's video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, comment those thoughts and opinions down below. We appreciate all of you watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time.